Hi and welcome back to MDriven. So this is the second video in this series where I will build a SaaS system from scratch in an area which I'm really not that familiar with. So I'm gonna use AI to help me to build the system that will be called takecaremobile.com. And what I've learned so far is that I will need a super admin that oversees the entire platform, manages global settings, and promotes users to provider admins. Yeah. Then we need healthcare providers that manage care plans, assign professionals, and oversee service quality. And an admin for those, set up the provider's company, manage its users, and configure operational settings. And in the end, healthcare professionals that are the ones that actually go out to the caretakers. And yeah, the very last are the caretakers. Yes. So in order, as we saw last time, I imported the packages for base application, which gives me all these things like login, etc. And I'm started at this diagram to pull in the sysuser class like this. Sysuser, I found it here and just drag it in like this. And that has the user object. So what's the difference between the sysuser and the user? The user is the real person, so to speak. And the sysuser is the account which that real user used to log in. Depending on how the flow is, when a user logs in, he will get an account. But maybe we want to invite users, real people, that doesn't have an account yet. Then we will only have a user, and that in turn, once they choose to create an account, it will be associated. So that's the distinction between these two and why we would need both. So what I did was to run the live edit on the index page. I put the splash screen and I reduced this to only one button, and this button is called Get Started, because I figured that no matter how you end up here, if you're totally new, you should get started. If you've been here before and you have an account, etc., you should still get started in the way that you should log in. So what this button is connected to is, yeah, it jumped to the login screen. But why did it do that? Let's go back and see if we can understand why it went to the login screen. So if I point on this Get Started, I can see that it's connected to an action called Get Started. Advanced Edit. Here's the action connection, Get Started. And the action, it will bring up the view model home. So this doesn't say anything about login, but still we ended up at the login screen. How come? Well, the trick is that the home view model, if we go to that, we can see that that has an access group on it. And it says is logged in access group. So what does that mean? With the base app, there comes a couple of access group. One is logged in. Let's see if we open the access group editor, what is logged in does. It's called is logged in, and it has an enable expression that will control if actions tied to the access group are enabled or not. So that supersedes any enable expression that's on the action itself. But in our case, we are looking for this visible expression if the view model should be visible at all. So what expression says is the sys singleton, OCL singleton, and the current user shouldn't be empty. So if it is empty, that means that we are not logged in, because the MDriven default pattern for logging in will put the user that's logged in this transient link, or this link, rather, this association. So if it's not empty, that means that the access group will return true, and then then you have access. If the access group return true, then you are allowed to go ahead. So what different access group do we have? Admin user mode active, debugging allowed, is dev or test environment, a few things that might come in handy. We can look at those as we need them. But the basic idea is the expression for an access group is often fairly simple. And then you associate a view or an action with an access group, and that sort of acts as the lock to stop someone from gaining access to something they shouldn't have. So what happens when you try to navigate to a view but you're stopped by an access group? Well, then you're automatically transferred to the login page. So if I were to open a browser and I push this get started, I can see that I was logged in with this account. Let me log out. Now I'm logged out and I push get started. And what happens is that I didn't have access because I wasn't logged in. So I ended up at the login page which also has a return URL set. So whenever I finally either register for a new account or log in with my demo account, I will be transferred to the page which I tried to go to. And that's this page, the one that I've chosen to call home. So what's with the home page then? First, we can see that home is associated with the class sysuser. So the class sysuser is this class that is set whenever someone is logged in that session that will be set. And what do I mean by set? Well, we have the sys singleton. Singleton is a name for a pattern that there will only be one instance of such a class. I'm going to hide all the features on this because I'm not that interested in showing things right here. So this is the current user. This is the one that will be set for me. So I know if this is assigned, this user is logged in. And I will assume that this user initially is someone that has the right to create a healthcare provider company. So I've created the class healthcare provider company and just given that one attribute name. And I then have an association between sysuser and healthcare provider company, many to many, because a sysuser might create many companies. And a healthcare provider company might have many sysusers. So many to many, denoted by the star here. And when you have many to many, it's quite often that you want to have some attribute on the pair of sysuser and healthcare company. And that's what a link object is, or an association class is, like this. Healthcare provider company access, I've called this. So is admin is something that will be important to know if for this company there will be a number of users, but which of those users are admin? Not all, probably. And then also I added a link, and one-to-one between sysuser and healthcare provider company called current company. So this is a way for me to know which company the sysuser has chosen to work with. So I'm going to take the home view model and I can put that on the diagram so it's easy for me to access at a later time. This is a good practice to put the view models on the diagram themselves, because then I can just double click and go straight into the view model like this. So what this does is take this only instance of the sys singleton and takes the current user. And from the current user, so this is just one user, it shows the username up here. And then it has a header called healthcare provider companies, just says companies. And under that, there is a column with this placing container that has a create and a delete button. Let's check what the create button does. Healthcare provider company create. So that's good. That will create a new company and return add it to the healthcare provider companies from the sysuser, which is self in this case. And it will also set that this particular person, sysuser, is admin for this company. And why is that? Well, it's only fair that if you create a company, you're also the administrator of it until further notice. And we also assign that this newly created company is the current company for this logged in sysuser. And then we give the new company a temporary name, yet unnamed company. So that's what the create button does. What does the delete button do? Well, it takes the currently selected company and just issues the action delete. But that might be dangerous. When are we allowed to delete? Well, we have the disable expression. That means that you're not allowed to do this when this is true. So if the current healthcare company, if I go up to all the SaaS users and the size is 1, well, that's okay, because if it's only 1 and I'm the admin, that means that that is probably only me. And if the only one is equal to me, then it's okay for me to delete it. That means that whenever I create one, I can also immediately delete it. But if I create one, wait a week, have a lot of other users join the company, however that will be done, then I can't just delete it prior to giving notice to all the people in the company. And I follow the link to list all the companies in this table over here. And that table has 1, 2, 3, 4 columns in it. So the first one is the name, and there's also a column called current, which draws a small arrow if self, which is the row in the table, which will be a company, equals the current company of me as a logged in user. It also lists all the people, the email addresses or the usernames of those people that are admins for this company. Might come in handy. And then there is an action, a button to choose that this company should be the current one. And then here, this is how far I got, is that the current company, the picked company's name should pop up here. Let's run this in Web Edit to see where we are. Get started. I need to log in this session. I'm logged in as this user. It's also over here. I can create a new company. That new company will be set as this current company. So the current company is named here. But maybe I don't want those. So I'm going to cancel all the edits. Now picking this company and pushing choose. If I name this to company 2, this will be updated. So now I have a way to have a new person create an account, create a company, a healthcare company, a provider company, or multiple of those, pick which one it's choose to be current, and that is the company over here. And the next step would be to maybe invite staff to log in to this particular company. How would I go about that? Well, I can just add data table with all the staff down here. But what kind of class is the staff then? Let's assume that the staff will just be users and they will be associated to a healthcare provider company. So a healthcare provider company will be able to have multiple staff. But one such user person in real life will probably be able to work for many healthcare provider companies. So we need a many-to-many in this situation as well. I'm going to change this to a star. And then we have this situation where we might want to have an association clause. An association clause is associated with the association with this tool here, association clause connection mode. So I just click that and end up on the association like that. That will mean that I will get one of these objects for each association I make. Good. So that means that the actual type on this grid columns probably should be user, or maybe optional staff user. It's usually better to take the association clause. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to call this staff user also. And here I can add columns. Just going to change this one to name. That's what I call the column, and the expression to get data. It's going from self, which will be a staff user, up to user. No, I'll call that staff. And that was, I'm going to have the name, which is pink here. It means derived. It's self first name plus the last name. That would be good. Good. Let me change this to staff. And this is then self dot staff user list. I will then need a way to either find an existing or create a new staff. So in order to do that, I will add a seeker to search between all the users that are available in the system. Maybe not all, maybe I'm not sure which one is best. So we will defer that decision and just go ahead and so I need a button, but the button, if I put the button here, I would rather have the button next to the company name. So I'm going to do a row and a column and move the grid down to the column and the company name down into the row, followed by the button. And the button is going to be find staff, add staff. That button will need to be backed by an action. So I connect the button to the action, and the action will need to bring up a new view, which I don't have. I'm going to call that staff seeker, and I'm going to take a pattern for that called it's going to have user as root class, and then the pattern the seeker auto form. This will search on first name, last name, and email, etc. So that's good. It has too many columns here. It's going to remove some. I also want us to be able to create a new user if one wasn't available. So when I search for a user, I get this, but I sort of switch screen, but maybe it's better to just get a model here. So in order to fix that, we're going to set on this action that brings up the seeker window that it is modal, and then we are allowed to do something when the modal closes, which is good because then we can say that it's okay to close the modal. And what's the expression that we're going to do once the modal closes? Well, then we need to check what's selected in the modal. So we do that by checking the modal result, and we check if we don't want to check what we searched on. We rather would like to check what was selected, and that row will be called user. So I'm going to take all the selected user, and then we collect over each one of those, calling one of them for u. And since we want to take the current company that we're in, or the one that we push the button on, which is this one, we can call this main instead, because then we can do the current of those. So now when I run the application, I can add staff by searching. This was really tight, but I can pick this one, and then I have staff over here. Of course, there's no name on this particular individual, which might be a problem. Probably if we are the admin of this company, we should be able to add staff. Now I'm thinking maybe we did this wrong. Maybe we shouldn't allow many to many over here. A couple of things comes to mind, and this model is really cramped, so we need to fix that. Staff seeker, we fix that with a tag value, I guess. Model size very large. Besides setting that, I'm going to reduce the number of columns shown, shorten the names, email. And since I noticed that the user object for the logged in user wasn't set to anything, it dawns on me that that is something that we will want to change here as well. So on this column here, let's add another column and say that this should be a sibling above. Put the username in it, but also so that we may change the name of ourselves when we come in here. This one really should be, and then we can call this search for, no, let's call that staff. And instead, when we go to the staff seeker, and let's try to have a button on this one called add new, and we can do that as a in place pop-up, and that is done with a nested view model class. It's up here, let's call that pop up, and it's going to be user, and we say that that button is connected to that nesting. Okay, we can created user, and we need a new variable called created user, which is of type user, and then we can set its first name and last name, and these should only be visible when this is on, and this should be only be visible when created user is no. Now we can actually allow for that to always be enabled. So when we go into add staff, we can add new. And maybe I was wrong. This add new may only work when we're not modal. So let's try and search for off. And we also want to actually add this one like that. We'll also want the email here. When this pops up, we see there's no background on the pop-up window. We will need to fix that, I think. So this one should have a style. Let's call that white back. Just call it white back. It's good, but we don't have such a style, so we need to go into style dialog and call that white back. And white back should match at least the placing container. We're going to activate that, and we want the fill color, but we had no color, so I'm going to add a color and call that color white and set it to almost completely white, and then have that as a fill color here. Then when this runs add new, then I can see there's a background on it. Maybe I want a margin on this one so that it doesn't look so cramped. I can put a margin on. I can go like this, and I put the margin on the inner one. All right, and then I did this on the wrong one. I'm gonna delete this one. Also gonna delete this one. All right, and now I have been able to get started. I can give myself the correct full name. I can create new companies, which I will be admin for. I can choose which company I want to work for or work with at this particular moment. So company one, add another. I can create new users. I can search for existing users, and if I find one I like, I can add that one and can save these changes. So I stop there for this session. We have moved beyond. Now we're on the staff, so we're here, and the next thing is to deep dive in one particular company to set up patients and things like that. Okay, thank you for listening.